Welcome to the lesson on verbs. Verbs are probably the most important of the 8 parts of speech. The reason they are important is because you cannot construct a sentence unless you have a verb. Other parts of speech, such as adverbs and adjectives and so forth, are not as necessary as verbs. Now, some people mistakenly think that verbs are simply words that show action in a sentence. That's not completely true. There are actually 5 categories of verbs. The first 2 categories are in fact action verbs, but they're slightly different. One is called intransitive, that's the correct name. The other one is called transitive. Now, by looking at the word transitive, you get the idea of something's being transported. Actually, that's true. It's action being transported from the subject to an object. Or, in some cases, if it's intransitive, means not transitive, there is no object. We'll look at examples of these in a moment. To be verbs are common in all modern languages. They indicate a sense of being or a state of being in a sentence. They do not exactly show action. Helping verbs do not by themselves show action. They help action verbs, however, to show a sense of time, past, present, or future. Linking verbs do not by themselves show action, but they link the subject to one of 2 things in the predicate. They will link the subject to a predicate noun or to a predicate adjective. And we'll see examples of those in a couple moments. 5 categories of verbs. Now, I said that action verbs are of 2 types, transitive and intransitive. Intransitive are probably the most common. That means that they do not require a direct object in the sentence. You can have a sentence as simple as, Marianne sings. Well, that's just 2 words. Is that a good sentence? Sure. It's grammatically correct. There's a subject and a verb. Nothing else is required. However, a transitive verb requires an object. If you were to say, for example, Miguel threw, well, there's a subject and a verb, but it doesn't make sense. Threw what? Oh, Miguel threw a ball. The ball is a direct object. So a transitive verb requires an object to make good sense. So we have intransitive, which is not transitive, the most common, and transitive, where in all cases a direct object is required. So look first at the intransitive action verbs. It describes the action taken by the subject. If I were to say, for example, Ronald runs fast, that's a perfectly good sentence. Very short, but it's good. The word fast is simply an adverb, tells how he runs, but Ronald is the subject, runs is an intransitive verb. No object is required. That by itself is a good sentence. The dog barked loudly. Woof woof, there he is. Loudly simply tells how the dog barked. But the verb barked is intransitive, does not need to be followed by an object. Here's Marianne sings that I mentioned just a moment ago. Those 2 words are perfectly good. Now we'll see that there's special cases where the action verb will switch between intransitive and transitive states, depending on what the writer is trying to communicate. I could say that Marianne sings gospel songs. Oh, now that's different. Now that intransitive verb becomes transitive. Sings what? Oh, sings gospel songs. But by itself is perfectly good in being used in an intransitive sense here. If I were to say father swims every day, swims is a perfectly good intransitive verb. Does not require an object out here in the predicate. And every day simply tells how frequently he swims. Maria shops at local stores. Shops, intransitive, does not require an object. local stores, that is not a direct object. That simply tells, it's a prepositional phrase, simply tells where she shops. Now let's look at transitive, which is a little bit different. They do require an object. If I were to say, for example, Marion gave Juan a kiss. Oh, that's just wonderful. She gave him something. Marion gave Juan. You're wondering what? You need an object to make sense of this. You can say Marion gave Juan a comic book, or Marion gave Juan a toy, or something like that. But an object is required in order to complete that sentence. He threw the ball. You can't simply have he threw, even though he is a subject, a pronoun, a subject, and threw is an action verb. The question is, through what? It doesn't make sense unless you put in a direct object. In this case, threw the ball. Mother baked a cake. And baked is another example of a transitive action verb. This is an interesting sentence here. The soccer team won a trophy. And won, in this case, is transitive because your question is, well, won what? Oh, won a trophy. Trophy is a direct object. But it's interesting that depending on what the writer is trying to say, you could change won to an intransitive verb. Imagine, for example, that two people are standing next to the high school athletic field, and one asks the other, how did our soccer team do this weekend? The other person responds, the soccer team won. So it's in response to a question, but in that case, an object is not required. So sometimes an action verb can be transitive or intransitive depending on the intent of the writer. That's you. The student wrote an essay. Well, that's very straightforward. You have to write something. In this case, he writes an essay, maybe for school. He could write a letter to grandma. He could do anything in writing. And wrote means it's past tense. He's through with his writing. But in every one of these cases, 1 through 5, direct objects are required for that action verb. To be verbs are common in all languages. And they express a state of being, a sense of time. Look at present tense. We refer to these as first person, second person, or third person. I am is first person, you are second person, and he, she, or it is third person, either in the present tense, past tense. The verbs change in the past tense. Instead of I am, it's I was. It's no longer current. Instead of you are, it's you were, okay? And in the third case, he, she, or it was. And we'll see how those are used in a sentence. To be verbs are very common in other languages also. For example, in Spanish, if you know Spanish, you would see many of these. For example, I am, Spanish would be yo soy. And you see others, ustedes, which is you are, we are, which is nosotros, or you are in a different sense, vosotros. In the case of Japanese, which I just came across in my researching, they have to be verbs, but they're more limited. They have a to be verb desu, which is in a broad sense. Aru, which is inanimate objects, refers to them, or airu, which refers to people or animals. And for Japanese people who are reading this slide right now, please forgive me if my pronunciations are incorrect. I don't pretend to know how to pronounce all of these things. Here's more about to be verbs. Jose will always be my friend. There's no action shown there, but it's a state of being, a state of existence. He is my friend, and he will be my friend. William has been here a month. Has been is another form of to be, and in this case it's past tense. Maria was away last week. Apparently Maria has come back, but last week she was away. Jerry and Leanne are cousins. Fine. In this case, I'm going to use a plural verb. It's a form of to be in the plural. I want to be successful. Again, there's no action is shown there, and it's simply a state of existence or state of being. Helping verbs are actually pretty important because they help action verbs express time or special conditions. A lot of people don't know about those special conditions. Let's say, for example, I have a sentence. Somebody says, I may marry you soon. I know that's not a firm commitment, but it is a special condition. Apparently the person, whether it's he or she, has got to think about the whole matter first. I may marry you soon. That's a helping verb. Marry is the verb, and this helps get the correct idea across about that verb. Peter was singing in the shower. Was is a helping verb. It helps singing, and it tells when he was singing in the shower. He's not singing there now because this is in the past tense. So at some former time he was singing in the shower. Father will be fishing next weekend. Here, fishing is the verb, the action verb, and will be is our helping to express the sense of time, when this is going to occur. It indicates the future. Louise and I, there we have more than one subject, that's fine. Louise and I were dancing, I'm using a plural verb, and it indicates a past tense. Maybe we were at a party or something and we were dancing. We're not dancing right now though. Michael is working on a project. That's present tense. He might be working on a school project or a project of his own or an engineering project, who knows. But he is currently working on it. Is helping. Working is the verb. The category of linking verbs is interesting. People tend to use them, but they don't realize that they are linking verbs and not showing action. All forms of the verb to be, which we already discussed, they serve as linking verbs also. And examples are the words am, are, is, was, and were. Here's an example. They were cheerful. Now, when we're using a linking verb is always followed by a predicate noun or a predicate adjective. And by predicate, we mean from the verb and all its modifiers, as opposed to the subject. They is a pronoun, is the subject. Were is the linking verb, and cheerful actually describes, like an adjective, it describes the subject. So that this is actually a predicate adjective, and that's fine. You can say, he is a caring person. Pronoun he is the subject. Is a linking verb. There's no action shown there. Just like in the previous sentence, a word that does not show action. And he is a person. Does person describe him? No, it renames him. This is a noun. So here we have a predicate noun, because it's in the predicate. He is, and is a linking verb, and this is a predicate noun. Be careful about some mistakes that some people make. One of them is misusing the be verb. They think that that is a linking verb or a descriptive verb of some kind, and it's not. If you hear somebody say, oh, he be a rap singer, that's dead wrong. It's a misuse of be. You might want to say he is, it's different, he is a rap singer, or he was a rap singer when he was younger or something, but don't say he be. Shows you're not educated. Don't say something like, oh, she be a good soccer player. That's wrong also. Be is not appropriate in that case. You can, if you want, use is, was, because it's going to be singular. Don't use a plural verb, which is were or are. You can say she is a good soccer player, she was, that kind of thing. That's a soccer player right there. Now there are other special linking verbs that also indicate a predicate noun or a predicate adjective. Here's an example. John, subject in this case, is the linking verb teacher. It does not describe him, it renames him. John and teacher are exactly the same thing. One does not describe the other. Teacher is a predicate noun because the predicate consists of the verb and all these other words that accompany it. Next sentence. Louise and Joan. There's compound subject. Are is plural verb. Beautiful. Now beautiful very much describes Louise and Joan. It doesn't simply rename them. It describes them. So here we have a predicate adjective. So we have subject, noun in the predicate, subjects, multiple, and adjective in the predicate. Noun in the predicate or adjective. There are some words that do not look exactly like linking verbs, but they have the same exact function. So we're going to call them linking verbs anyhow. Anytime we have a verb that links a subject to a complement, for example, a noun or an adjective, can be words like become, seen, appear, taste, and so forth. Look at this sentence. The bread smells burned. It is burned in the toaster, I guess. I don't know. Smells, in this case, is a linking verb. It's not an action verb because the bread doesn't do any smelling. Bread does not smell. It doesn't have a nose. Okay, the bread smells burned. You could substitute is, the bread is burned. Oh, that's pretty obvious, a linking verb then. Or the bread was burned, that kind of thing. How about this one? She appears aloof. And aloof is a word that simply describes somebody who thinks he or she is better than everyone else. This is actually a linking verb also, because you can substitute she is aloof, or she was aloof before she changed her ways. It is not action. No action is expressed there. If you're out at dinner with your friends and you comment about the steak, you say, oh, this steak tastes wonderful. Oh, that's good. The steak is not doing any tasting. This is not action. Steak is just laying there, ready to be eaten. But you can substitute a more conventional linking verb by saying, this steak is wonderful. It's fine. And in that case, it's pretty obvious that taste and is are the equivalent. They can be exchanged back and forth. So these are all linking verbs also. Do not think that they are showing action. Like taste kind of makes you think, oh, yeah, that probably shows action. No, it doesn't in this case. In other cases, it might, but not here. Well, that concludes the information you need to know about verbs. For additional reading, I suggest you get a copy of The Only Grammar Book You'll Ever Need by Susan Thurman. By the way, I don't get anything out of this. Do not get a commission or anything of the kind. I'm just passing on information. That book is available used on eBay for about $3.50, somewhere around there. Don't buy a new book. You don't need that. A used book is just fine. Well, that concludes our lesson for today, and I hope to see you again.